Break Fix Podcast is all about capturing the living history of people from all over the autosphere, from wrench turners and racers to artists, authors, designers, and everything in between. Our goal is to inspire a new generation of petrol heads that wonder, how did they get that job or become that person? The road to success is paved by all of us because everyone has a story.
From vintage treasures to cutting-edge marvels of modern engineering, our guests take you on a captivating ride, sharing insights, experiences, and the unspoken camaraderie that unites enthusiasts worldwide. Whether you're a seasoned gearhead or simply captivated by the allure of a well-crafted automobile, their show invites you to buckle up and join a community that celebrates the timeless love affair between man and machine.
For over 4 years, the hum of engines and the allure of the open road have met in a thrilling conversation about cars and car culture. Ryan Barkey and Doug Fogler are the automotive aficionados behind the Steering Committee podcast. On their show, they navigate the twists and turns of the automotive world, delving into the soul-stirring stories behind classic cars, the latest innovations in automotive technology, and the vibrant tapestry of car culture.
And with that, let's welcome Ryan and Doug to Break Fix.
Welcome.
Hey guys, it's quite an intro.
Yeah, thanks for having us. That's a great intro.
You guys like that?
Eric knows how to read a bio.
I like that. Next time in haiku form, please.
Speaking of that, these are two big shows coming together. This is a bit of East meets West, and we really want to get the East Coast guys to better understand where you guys are coming from. A Denver-based automotive enthusiast podcast. So, like all good break fix stories, there's a superhero origin story. Tell us about Ryan and Doug. How did you guys get started in cars? How did the love affair begin? How did you guys get together? Who wants to go first? Ryan?
Show started because of Doug's wife. We actually had a mutual friend. Doug's wife is an architect. We had a neighbor who's an architect. They had worked together at one time, and they said, hey, we have a new neighbor who's a car guy, just moved here from Chicago. You should meet our other friend who's a car guy. We got the families together for lunch or dinner or whatever it was. Pretty quickly, it was the two of us at the end of the table jabbering about cars. And it was your wife that said, you guys sound like a car podcast, right? And it was all downhill from there. And here we are. And we sat down one night with an iPhone, got loaded up on bourbon.
Our original band name was Burbles and Backfire. That's what we thought we would start off with. We just sat down, though. We kind of did a test of concept of it. And as always, he and I always had a great conversation just talking about cars. We're similar ages, and we sort of have like a shared common sort of like tapestry, if you will, of sort of car history and car culture. So it just kind of got going from there and hasn't really stopped.
I don't know if I go that far, Doug. You grew up with Peugeots and Mercurs, oddballs.
Yeah, that is true.
We were a little more mainstream in the Barkey house.
That's true. I guess you'd read about those cars, those exotic cars in your magazines.
That's
I
right.
had some time in them, but two different back-to-back 505 Peugeot station wagons and a Mercor XR4 Ti in my young driving career.
All right. So, okay, Mercor XR4 Ti, for everybody listening in Europe, that's what we called the Ford Sierra over here. So that's a cool car. Like, hands down, I am super jealous. Every once in a while you see one of those. But the 505 Peugeot, what makes that car cool is that it's a station wagon. I am a long roof society guy if there ever was one. So I got to give you massive points, even though it's French.
And really, it's my mom that deserves the points. She was the one that fell in love with it and bought two of them back to back. But, I agree. And it's also just a very handsome looking car. I mean, if you go back and look at them, they stand up well today. And a very practical car. It had a lot of interior space. For the size footprint of the car, you could fit a lot of stuff inside of it. So that was a good one. The Mercor and the Peugeot were kind of my first two cars. I drove them both in high school as I got my license a little bit. Those are my first two experiences.
Doug, didn't you buy those at the same dealership that Jay Leno worked at in high school? Isn't that the connection?
Yeah, although you're correct, we are like a Colorado-based car podcast. I'm from Massachusetts originally, so I grew up outside of Boston. The dealership that we got the Peugeots from was called Foreign Motors West. Because there was a Foreign Motors East, but this was Foreign Motors West. It was in the suburbs west of Boston. I've listened to enough of Jay Leno's interviews that I know he worked at that dealership when he was a young teenager before he came out and made a career in comedy. At the time we were going there, it was Rolls-Royce, Bentley, Range Rover, and I think Jaguar, and then Peugeot was their entry-level cars. As the car was being serviced, which it happened a lot, I was able to go over there and just sort of move through. Each brand had its own like separate sort of like small little building showroom, so I could move through the different ones and see all the higher end, mostly British cars, which was awesome. I loved going out there.
Well, since we're talking about origins here and growing up in New England, for you, Ryan, I heard that you're a transplant to the Denver area too. You're not originally from there either.
Yeah, I'm a Midwestern guy, born in Madison, Wisconsin, bounced around a lot growing up. My dad was a college professor chasing tenure, so a lot of Midwestern college towns. And then lived in Chicago for about 20 years before we moved out here to Denver 9 years ago. We were a little more mainstream growing up. We were a Volkswagen family.
Hey!
I still own a Volkswagen to this day. My daily driver is a 2017 Tiguan. Somewhere along the line, my dad got a BMW, an E30, a 325, and my first car was an E20, a 320i. It was all kind of downhill from there, turned into a Porsche guy.
There's a story behind that E30, though, isn't there? I heard it had something to do with the acquisition of that car.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So we grew up, we had Volkswagens and Chrysler minivans, right? We lived in Indianapolis at the time, and there was a chain of car washes called Mike's Car Wash. Well, Mike was this like local celebrity, right? On TV and all this. And his personal ride was an 87 325. It was red with gold BBS wheels. And he would park that thing out in front of the car wash every day. And we'd drive past it, and I thought that thing was the coolest. And eventually popped up with a for sale sign. Randomly, my dad decided to buy it. And I thought it was the coolest thing. I took that car to prom a few years later. And I eventually bought the 320, and always German cars, though. Somewhere along the line, got into Porsches. My dad drives a pretty nice Porsche now himself, but always German stuff, American stuff, never anything too weird like Peugeot.
Is there even a Peugeot dealership in the state of?
I don't think there was. So at the time we were in Indianapolis, and Dreyer and Reinbold, they actually ran race teams for many years. Their dealership was in Indianapolis. And, you're talking late 80s, early 90s. A BMW was a pretty exotic car. They weren't the commodity cars that they are now, right?
They were still taxi cabs in Europe, I'm just saying, right?
True. Guys, do you notice, at least here locally in Denver, our mail is delivered in Mercedes Metris vans now, but they cover up the Mercedes star with an eagle. Have you noticed?
Yep.
As not to dilute the brand or whatever, right? So anyway, Peugeot would have just been crazy talk. A little too heady, rather, for Indianapolis, I think, Doug.
I think you're confusing like headiness or whatever with just unusualness. It wasn't like necessarily like a really nice car. I mean, they're pretty standard cars in France, but they are exotic. I will give you that. You don't see them every day.
And that actually sort of leads into my next thought, which is, Ryan, it sounded like the E30 got you excited about cars, like Volkswagens and Caravans. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
But that E30 started to make the blood pressure rise. And Doug, the Peugeots, like you said, it's not that exciting. So was there a car that sort of invited you into becoming an enthusiast?
My dad is a big car enthusiast, and that's really where it comes from. The first car I can remember him having was something called a Dodge O124, I think. It was one of those little front wheel drive, sort of like two-door kind of coupe things. Would have been in the late 80s. He get upgraded to a Dodge Daytona Shelby Z, which was sort of like the ultimate expression of that sort of front wheel drive two-door personal luxury coupe things that Dodge and Chrysler groups were selling. He was a child of the 60s, so he was thrilled to find that there was a car that Shelby had officially worked on or, at least licensed out his name to that he could actually afford and get. I just remember him coming back. They went off to go buy the car. We stayed with our grandparents, and I just saw them coming down the road, and I couldn't believe when the car that was in front of him turned out of the way, and I was suddenly revealed with this bright red Dodge Daytona Shelby Z, which I mean, it might as well have been a Testarossa at that point. I didn't know necessarily any better, but like it was red, it had a spoiler, it was a manual, it was turbocharged. I didn't know things about like front wheel drive and torque steer and understeering, handling, that kind of thing. And between that and the fact that he had constantly, and still to this day, even has a subscription to Road and Track magazine, which I just voraciously ate up every time it came in the house. Between that and hearing stories from him about going to Formula One races at Watkins Glen's with all his college friends and just all these great sort of stories. I mean, the Ford v Ferrari story was told in my house like as if it was just the Immaculate Reception, just part of like normal pop culture. I just thought that's what everyone learned about. So that's what got me going in that. I appreciate the Peugeot, but you're right. It's not really like the taproot car that you might think.
Doug touched a little on magazines, and I think that was a huge driver, no pun intended, for both of us growing up. Doug was a road and track guy. I was a car and driver guy. I lived for those magazines that show up in my mailbox, once a month.
Yeah.
Chubba Chetta and Brock Yates and John Phillips and all those guys just made such an impression on me. And I was never a big sports kid growing up. So instead of baseball stats, it was me in that Road Test Digest, at the back, we all know and love, right? And, this is when a fast car was anything under about 15 seconds in the quarter mile.
Ryan can still to this day still pull up 0 to 60 times on some of these old cars, that we fondly remember. And he's usually right on.
Any better, right? It was all about the 0 to 60 time. We didn't realize that they were like sacrificing clutches to get to these these times, right?
All it meant was that it could do it once, and that meant it could do it. And that's what I needed.
That's right.
Well, Brad, I think we should probably take a pit stop. And since we're all petrol heads of a certain age, I want to dive into the children of the 80s questions that we like to throw at some of our guests. So I think we'll start with poster on the wall. What was in your bedroom? It could have been a pinup. I mean, I get that, but car that was on your wall as a kid.
I'm going to tell you something very embarrassing. Before I got into cars, I was really into fire engines. So I literally had posters of fire engines on my wall till about 11 or 12. And then I got into, I think I was a Lamborghini guy at first. I had a neighbor who was a bit of a playboy and who had a 911 turbo and black with silver BBS wheels. And that turned me into a Porsche guy pretty early on. Never a Ferrari guy. That was something I never had a poster of. There was just something about Porsche or Lamborghini that just seemed, the wings and all just seemed a little extra. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's my secret. It was fire engines for a long time. Embarrassing.
Along the same lines, I remember I had like one of those Trapper Keeper folders, like one of those like cardboard ones that you would put like in the notebook, and it was all trucks, semi trucks. That's what I was really into, I guess.
Really? I didn't know that, Doug.
Like the ones with like the little sleeper cabs on the back, the big like Peterbilts and Mack trucks and things like that.
Flat nose, like the cab over.
I liked them all. I liked all of them. So yeah, that was sort of my similar story there. But like as far as the poster cars though, and I still actually have all three of these. There was a red Countach, a yellow Dino, and a silver 959 Porsche. I have those actually still at my garage. And then a little bit later, it's not technically an 80s car, but then also the Viper GTS, the original one, blue with the white stripes down the middle. That was on my wall as well. So,
Brad, what was on your wall? I know one of them.
What is one of them?
The Fiero.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Just because of the well-endowed woman on the front. That's why the Fiero was there. No.
Well, at least the woman was well endowed. Yeah.
He hates Fieros, by the way.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you remember how exotic those seemed, though? They were
Right?
mid-engine. I mean, they are. They were mid-engine, two-seaters.
What's the 0 to 60 time on that, Ryan?
Well, are we talking the GT or what was the 2M4? What was it?
Yeah. 2M6.
2M6, right. Yeah, that's right. I think the GT was probably a smoking 8.7, but I'll have to check that one. Yeah.
I had a radio-controlled Pontiac Fiero as a toy. I remember that. That was also
probably faster than the real thing, Doug.
Yeah, right. More reliable, too.
Yeah.
Brad, what else was on your wall?
I never really had a lot of posters on my wall. It was like all bands and like music and stuff like that. For me, the car stuff was the Hot Wheels. I had a Countach, I had a Testarossa, and a 911, and those were my favorite when I was a kid.
Inquiring minds want to know what band posters were on your wall.
Van Halen, Guns N' Roses, AC/DC, and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
To my Euro trash, it's all heavy metal for Brad. We are yin and yang when it comes to music, that's for sure. But we both appreciate each other's style, so it's all good.
Yeah.
What were you into then?
Oh man, so right above my bed was a black on triple black 930 turbo.
Nice,
and it was gorgeous. I finally sold that picture not long ago. It was framed and everything, and I never had place for it in the house that we're in now. I have a lot of vintage stuff in the house, like old Nürburgring rally. I'm a big Group B fan. So that was huge for me. My room was adorned with 1/18 scale model cars, which I still have.
You sniffed a lot of glue growing up, huh?
These are all metal. So
Okay.
I have close to 70 of them right now,
Wow,
which is not a huge collection, but it's a lifelong collection. So those have always been important to me, and they've survived moves and kids and everything else. Yeah, the one big poster on my wall in my room was the 930, and downstairs we had sort of like a playroom study area for me and my sister. And the one poster that sort of survived, and Brad's going to laugh at me because I make fun of him relentlessly for this. I had a from the Porsche factory cutaway blueprint of the 924 up on the wall. Yeah, that was given to me by one of the Porsche training instructors for like the engines and stuff. And so to me, it wasn't the coolest Porsche, but I was like, this is like a factory thing. This is like
super
legit.
cool.
And so I had that up on the wall, and I would just kind of stare at it. And
excellent.
That's fantastic.
I can also confirm, even though you say you hate this car, at some point in your life, you had one of these on your wall because I got it from your mom.
That's true. I forgot about that.
Nice. I'm sorry. Did you say I got it from your mom?
Yeah. My mom.
Yeah, I did. Eric and I went to high school together.
Yeah, we've known each other a long time.
What else did you get from his mom?
Bowls of
I'm
pasta,
sorry
I
if you're
think.
listening to this, Patricia.
No, my mom was never the type to like throw my stuff away. So it's like she kept all this ridiculous, and I forgot I even had that F50
That's
poster
amazing.
or whatever, which it's in better hands now because that's where Brad and I differ on the Ferrari camp, which actually leads into our next question. You guys are sitting at the boardroom table and you guys are the ones that have to make the decision. Do you build the 959 or the F40?
Oh, that's such a tough one, guys.
I'll answer it quickly because I know I have my answer, and then I'll give Ryan some time to think.
Yeah.
F40. Yeah, F40 for me.
Says the guy with the 959 poster?
Oh yeah. Well, what I was gonna say is that came as like a set, and like so I put it up there, but like I didn't get Porsches until I was older. I thought the 911 looked weird, honestly. I never liked it. I mean, right next to Testarossa, Countach, Italian stuff. I mean, it looks kind of weird and funky at first. I was wrong. I mean, I admit that now. I'm okay saying that. It's like one of these things you grow into. It's like you grow to appreciate it. Like no one in my close circle, I didn't see very many of them in real life. I didn't really understand one until I heard an air-cooled, at full song driving by me at one point, and then I sort of kind of the light bulb kind of went off. But yeah, I mean, at that point, yeah, I mean, F40 to me is a top 3 car, so I have to go ahead and say yes to that. I feel like it was like a moment in time where Ferrari was just willing to try everything. They kind of threw out this interesting thing out there. Most expensive car was Spartan on the inside. I mean, they were charging all this money for this car that was basically just like so harsh and unusable in so many ways, but such a pure expression of what they could do at that time. And I like that it has rally car roots in it as well, which is unusual for a supercar. As a fan of Group B, I think you could probably verify that the roots of that started in Group B. It was sort of an evolution of their program that was never really fully completed, but that's where it came from. So yeah, F40 for me all day long.
And guys, I'm a Porsche guy through and through. There's something about an F40. To me, it's probably the most desirable Ferrari ever.
Yeah.
The 959 is just sort of a fancy 911, let's be honest, right?
It's a 911 with Quattro. I just want to point that out.
True. I mean, it was way ahead of its time. Adjustable ride height, you can go on and on. There's something very special. And maybe that's what I would actually buy. The old who would you marry, who would you date? I think I'd date the F40, but I'd probably marry the 959. There's a reason I've owned a few Porsches, right? They're safe. That F40 is a little dangerous, maybe.
And that's what makes it exciting.
Yeah. And I think I'm going to have to go F40 too.
That's surprising.
Brad will never give me the satisfaction because he hates the F40. He prefers the
Really?
F50.
How do you hate
that's no. Okay. So in this scenario, I'm F40 all day long.
Okay.
Between the F40 and the F50, I prefer the F50.
Interesting.
Oh, okay. So if the question was expanded to
anyone else here would take the F50 over the F40?
you're just in between the F40 and 959, though, you go F40.
Yeah, the F40 is just a visceral experience.
Yeah.
It's like the epitome of man and machine at its most simplest form.
Yeah.
It's a race car, straight up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so's the F50.
Yeah, you see that carbon fiber weave, it's
Yeah.
The F50, they literally took the F1 motor and put it into a street car. I mean, that's
a good point.
Yeah, but
that's not the argument we're having right now.
it's bloated and it's soft and it's
it just
big.
doesn't sing to me in the same way,
exactly. It's the 90s.
Eric's not a fan of the 90s bubble era. He's a fan of the 80s.
They all look like marshmallows. Since we can take the 90s off the table as children of the 80s, if you could buy one car from the 80s, what would it be?
All right, I'll go all in and say Vector.
Oh,
just for shits and grins, right? I mean, I'm sure it's a terrible thing to drive. I've never even seen one.
Oh, I got to see one at Car Week in person.
Yeah.
It's big. It's bigger than you think.
Shout out to our friends at the Peterson who just did something with Car Wow on YouTube. I think they drag raced it. Was it a Vector versus a first gen Viper? Shockingly, the Viper broke into the high 12s. The Vector was like something like close to high 13s or something. I think it all came down to that terrible 3-speed hydromatic GM transmission the thing has. But
yeah,
so that's what I sort of fantasize about buying, right? Because that was vaporware back when we were kids, right?
Yeah.
But F40, man, there's just something about an F40. There's just something about an F40.
Doug, what do you think? If money was no object, a car from the 80s, what would it be?
Yeah, F40 would be up there. But if any car's on the table, it's just as a promise to myself, it would be a Countach. And that's just That's just the 6-year-old self not knowing that those things, not understanding like the concept of money and how much more expensive those were than other cars, and just being able to like, give that gift to myself now. But I say those two, but I kind of also want to say RS 200 too sometimes, but that's one I was kind of onto a little bit earlier, I think, than some people. But like that was also another one that it just also would be so fun to have. It's like that's with hindsight now. That would be fun to have now. It would be so exotic. No one would know. Well, I shouldn't say that. No one would see very often here in the United States. You could take that to Radwood, and you would basically win Radwood if you had one of those. But it's something of those things. But I didn't want to be boring and just say F40 again. So that's probably really what I would buy.
When did the F40 actually come out?
1987.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure that was actually an 80s car.
Yeah, it's legit 80s.
And based on even older tech when you really boil it back. But I think it's funny, some of the cars you pick. And I too am like, F40 is the pinnacle. And then, there's a lot of really cool stuff in there. And then, I'm a huge Group B fan. So yes, any of those cars, whether it's the Audi S1 Evo 2, or you're talking Lancia Deltas, or even Renault R5 Turbos, stuff like that. And I'm like, you know what? I had to have one car, and that's the only car I get. And I have to just go all in. CTR Yellowbird. How can you go wrong?
All right. Yeah. All right. Good choice.
Yeah, it's a good choice too. And you're the fastest car on the planet for a while there. So
exactly.
I think until McLaren or the EV110 or Jaguar XJ220, I think knocked it off officially. But yeah, there you go. You got that for a while though.
Got the chance to meet Aloisa Roof at the Peterson the last time I was there, and also Bruce Meyer, who we recorded with about a year ago now. Of course, very famously has the first customer roof Yellowbird. It's just a thing. It has a presence like some cars do, right? Doug talks often about the time it was was a Car and Driver Road and Track.
It was Road and Track. 87, world's fastest car issue. It features that Yellowbird as well as just all the other sort of 80s greatest hits in a big sound.
Did you guys ever see the video that Roof put out? It's called Roof Fascination. You can probably still find it on YouTube. It's the guy in the loafers, and he's going around the Nürburgring.
Yes.
Oh yeah. I've seen that. Yeah. I didn't know it was called that. I've seen the video on YouTube, I think. But yeah, just absolutely just caning it right around the ring. Yeah.
It was a different kind of driving, wasn't it? Versus like getting into a new GT3 RS or something. That was a different animal.
Well, I'll never forget when I first saw that video. We were at a Porsche Club meeting here in the DC area, and one of I think it was either president or vice president of the club, shows up with this VHS from Roof. He's like, I got to show you guys something. You're never going to believe this. Puts it in, tracking, all this kind of shit's going on. And you're like, what are we looking at? And it opens with the Yellowbird just sideways, just torching the tires. And you're just like, what? I'm a kid, that. And I'm just like, my mind is exploding, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Something I don't think maybe like younger enthusiasts may not understand. Like, it was so unusual to see a car like that in motion with sound and everything like that, power sliding. Like, you didn't, like you said, there was like this bootleg VHS tape that had to go around for that to see it. I remember seeing like a tiny clip of an F40 sort of like power sliding around a corner just in time, and it had to end out, and it pulled it back in just in time before it hit the oncoming traffic. And I don't even know where that was from, but I mean, it was like 20 years until I, started to see that stuff on the regular, with Top Gear and now YouTube and everything else.
We grew up, I know you guys have had John Davis on, shout out to John, but Motor Week was the only sort of like automotive video content that we had access to growing up. First time I saw Top Gear, it blew my mind, I can't imagine, someone takes out this VHS thing like it's a snuff video or something, and you're like, amazing.
The other one was Rendezvous, if you guys have ever seen that.
I don't know.
It's the old black and white, filmed in Paris in the middle of the morning, and there's all this speculation as to whether it's a Ferrari or if it's a Mercedes, and he's just rolling through all in one take, and it ends with him parking at this park, and then he meets his girlfriend or whatever, and then the movie just ends, and it's like 12 minutes of just absolute chaos and glory and just it's amazing.
I didn't know that's what it was called, but
you can find it. Yeah, it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
I used to have that on DVD. I don't know. We don't have a DVD player anymore, so I don't know. I think I should still have the DVD, but I have no way of showing it. But yeah, that's an incredible 12 minutes of just pure
adrenaline.
Exactly. Car, just adrenaline. Yeah.
It's all about the fantasy, isn't it?
Way before Ronin, so we got that.
One more question to establish your car credibility before we start talking about the steering committee of the show. The ugliest car of all time.
I think that I said at one time it was the Aztec. I went with the flow. I realized now it was way ahead of its time. I think the first version of the Jeep Renegade is up there for me.
Hmm.
Hideous creature. That's about as bad as it gets for me because there are cars that are ugly but are funky, right? Like they're so bad they're good.
Yeah.
That was a car that was just terrible. I mean, it was a car created for the low credit, high interest sort of set.
We're talking about the Aztec or the Renegade?
No, the Renegade, the Jeep Renegade. That was just it wasn't a Jeep and it wasn't a Renegade, you know?
I don't know my Jeeps as well. Are you talking about the one that had kind of like first one that had like square headlights and had those kind of weird sort of like pieces of the trim on the bottom of it that were
No, maybe I have the name wrong. Sorry. So it was the Liberty, but it was like the more street version. Was that not the Renegade? What was that called?
No, that was the Compass.
Ah, the Compass. Sorry. Okay.
The Renegade is basically the Fiat Panda.
Yeah, sorry. The Jeep Compass, I'm going to go on record now.
the recent version that they did. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, although that Renegade was damn funky too, right? Because it had the extra lights, to Doug's point, and the fenders. Yeah. No, that Jeep Compass is the ugliest car. I'm going to go on record.
I know there's worse cars than this. I know it. I just can't think of them right now. But what's our catfish there, Ryan, that we talked about as well?
Some of those newer
Hyundai.
Yeah, they look sort of like bottom feeders, right?
Yeah.
Ioniq 6, that's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking even like the Elantra
The current Elantra is just hideous.
and the Sonata of recent.
With those wispy eyes.
Yeah, real weird. Well, what's the sedan that's out now that almost is Porsche-like from the side? It's very funky. It's very avant-garde.
Yeah, that's the Ioniq 6.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like a Saab. That's what we keep
Yeah,
saying.
yeah. So I kind of hate it, but I kind of love it. Yeah.
The Aztec has always been the go-to answer, followed by like the Multipla, and there's a couple other cars in there.
Yeah, but that's got character. That's got personality.
There's a vehicle now that takes the cake, and Brad has an allotment on one, and he is willing to trade it for a bucket of chicken. And what is that, Brad?
Oh, you mean the Cybertruck?
That is the new Aztec, as far as I'm concerned.
So you stepped up, you paid the $100, you got the t-shirt.
What t-shirt?
Wait, there's a t-shirt?
I'm supposed to get a t-shirt? I never get a
Get
t-shirt.
a t-shirt.
God damn it, Elon Musk, where is my t-shirt? I paid $100 for a Cybertruck, and all I got was no stupid t-shirt.
I'm writing this down because you're getting grief on the next drive-through. Brad should have got a t-shirt.
Yeah, you got to read the fine print there, and then but then I'm sure there's a way that they backed out of that one. So getting the allotment just kind of for the story, or is that something you're interested in getting, or?
I was never interested in getting it. I put in the $100 day one.
Yeah.
Okay.
The plan was if the vehicle ever showed up, I was going to try and either buy it and flip it or sell my place in line. I was pretty high up in line or whatever. At least I thought I was. But
how's that played out for you?
There's a whole episode coming out about this.
I'm out $100. That's how it's played out for me.
Yeah.
He's out whatever the equivalent of $100 is in Dogecoin. I just want to point this out. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Elon Musk gave me $100 worth of hopes and dreams.
Hey, that's not nothing.
Theoretically, a year and a half from where we are right now, a year and a half ago, what would you have handicapped the chances of the truck actually overall just being produced? I would have said 1 in 3, maybe. Like, I think I would have been that skeptical.
Yeah, I was a little surprised when we saw the first one.
I never thought it was coming. I thought Tesla was going to fold before it showed up.
But there's still hope for the Roadster. Don't forget, 1,000 people put money down for that. So, hey.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Never accept any of the dates that they propose. But yeah, it's like if we give them enough time, then yes, they will eventually produce a Roadster, right? Like that's sort of the way that worked.
Who would have ever thought that first? Was it called the Roadster the first time around? That Tesla, that Lotus Elise based thing?
Lotus Elise, yeah.
And now they're going for $100,000 on Bring a Trailer. Like, what is that? That's
collector. I mean,
what comes out first, the Tesla Roadster or the new DeLorean?
Ooh, them's fighting words there, man.
I know nothing about the funding behind a new DeLorean or anything like that. I don't even know if it exists, but I would actually potentially say it might come out ahead of the Tesla Roadster. But I just don't have any faith in Tesla in terms of like meeting any goal that they set for themselves. So
tell us about this new DeLorean, because I've heard about new DeLoreans coming out now for a few years. There was some guy who said he was John DeLorean's illegitimate son.
There's a couple different versions of the new DeLorean.
Okay.
You did some work with Kat DeLorean on the show of last year or something.
We did a mini series with Kat. That's John's only daughter.
Okay.
Basically, she's designing her own car, and it's going to be a mid-engine supercar. She actually got together with one of the designers that's at Rimac and Bugatti, and he did a tribute to the original DMC-12. So we had him on, and they're still working the bugs out, trying to figure out, how they're going to develop the car. They want to build it here in the United States, actually back in Detroit, all that kind of stuff. At the same time, there's a bunch of guys guys that left Fisker and started what they called DeLorean Reimagined. And they had a car that came out at Car Week 2 years ago.
Oh, yes. Right.
Which is actually based on the Giugiaro-inspired Ital design Da Vinci, which is a prototype, which has gull wings and all this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then to make things muddier, Steve Wynn bought the DeLorean Motor Company.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Steve Wynn, as in the Vegas casino tycoon, he bought the DeLorean Motor Company, moved it to Humboldt, Texas, and they actually were talking about doing their own EV based on the old car and all this kind of stuff.
Okay.
There's 3 DeLoreans in the mix. I don't know which, the tortoise or the hare, that's going to come out
Yeah,
first.
but wasn't there some weird 3-wheeler or something in the mix?
So that was some guy in like the Eastern Bloc claiming
Nut job. Yeah.
Is the group that's headed by John DeLorean's daughter, is that planning to be an electric or an internal combustion engine?
both.
Runs off water, Doug.
Like a hybrid. Okay. Yeah.
No, not like a hybrid. Having 2 options.
Okay.
Having a V8 power plant and then having an electric power plant. And then you get the option of either in the same chassis rather than 2 different cars. And so that's something that when we had Angel Guerrera on, he explained how he designed a car to accept different power plants. And so that way, if they wanted to run big block Chevy, they could, or an LS, or if they wanted to run a Ford or even a German motor, like a Mercedes AMG, it would fit all of it. And then there was enough room, the way he kind of stacked the chassis, that he could still center balance the batteries and the EV system. So it'd be rear wheel drive and all this kind of thing. So it's really well crafted from a theoretical perspective, but now it's how do we build this thing so we can do exactly what we said.
That'd be an interesting design study. I mean, the shape and the way that an internal combustion engine works and the required drivetrain is really sets a lot of what the sort of the hard points of the car have to be. I mean, it's really dictated a lot by that. And to have something designed both ways, that sounds like an interesting challenge.
And I think his experience at both Bugatti and at Rimac led him to that conclusion that he could do it, because he had a hand in designing the Nevera and some of the other, not the Bugatti Divo, but one of the other ones that's of like a similar design and shape. And you kind of see his design language in those cars. And so he's taking from his own imagination, but his own experience to develop something like that. So it's really cool. We don't know how it's going to pan out, but we'll see, right?
Yeah. That's exciting.
Even though I just found out about all of these, I still have more faith in one of those companies getting to the finish line before.
Well, when you don't play by the rules, you can do whatever you want.
Pretty much.
Plus, the odds are in my favor. There's 3 entities going for it, so I think I have a better chance if I pick that. So,
all right. Well, Brad, why don't we switch gears?
So let's talk about the steering committee, your podcast. And so what is the steering committee all about? Where'd you come up with the name for it?
Like Doug said earlier, I think we were originally supposed to be called Bourbon and Backfires or something. I'm so glad we didn't go with that. The steering committee, I'm not even sure where that came up. It seemed clever at the time.
We were texting back and forth about names, and I threw something out there. It wasn't the steering committee, but Ryan thought that that's what I had texted or said or something.
That's right. Yeah, I remember that now. Yeah.
He said steering committee. He said, that's great. And I was like, oh, that is great. I didn't come up with that, but that is great. And honestly, we still bounced around a few ideas, but I don't think either of us came off of that one.
Yeah. No, I think like a lot of things, it was just a happy accident. I think we spent a lot of time starting out trying to be like other people, right? I mean, of course, there's Matt Farah and the Smoking Tire and Zach and Spike's Car Radio. And I think from the get-go, we knew we weren't going to be car reviewers. There are plenty of people doing car reviews. I think for us, it was always just sort of about the hang, right? Let's hang out, let's talk cars, maybe smoke a cigar, have a little bourbon. Denver's got a pretty wonderful, robust car scene, right? So we never have any lack of guests or people. I think once we stopped trying to be someone else is when we sort of found our voice. And I think that's what we are. We're a hang. We have listeners that reach out to us and say, hey, I live in Peoria, Illinois. We don't have a car community in the same way that you guys do. So I like to go out in my garage on a Sunday, work on my car and listen to the steering committee. And you're sort of like my car pals because I don't have any car pals like that locally. I think once we embrace that, again, we sort of found our way.
No, absolutely. I mean, when that listener wrote that to us and explained what he did, that was one of the nicest things anyone's ever said about it. Just that you guys are my car friends. Like I can put you on and listen. That's what we want. We want our guests to come on. We want them to relax. Many people don't have the chance to talk to other car people in their day-to-day life. So that if we can provide that for our guests and then for our wider audience, I think that's for me is what makes a really successful show is just that great conversation that you get excited about.
We'll never claim to be car experts. We have a tagline. I think we stole it from Bob Lutz, which is
seldom right, but never in doubt. That's our philosophies.
Our credo, right? Yeah.
In all seriousness, it's not always about being right. It's just about being like really interested in cars and just wanting to talk about it and just having the conversation go further. I will never claim to be right about a lot of things. whatever metaphor you want to use, the campfire or just the hang or just the little club you get to come in and just sort of talk cars and really get it all out of your system.
Doug and I both have day jobs. Doug's an attorney. I'm like a creative manager, creative director at a big consulting company. We don't get to scratch this itch, 9 to 5. And so it's a great sort of counterbalance to that. I grew up wanting to be a car journalist. Again, car and driver. I got to meet Chubba Chetta here. You know the name. Looks nothing like how it's spelled, right?
Yeah.
From Car and Driver. He lives here locally. I mean, it was a dream for me to meet him. But I grew up wanting to be a car journalist. I knew I was never going to be an engineering major. I knew I was never going to be a journalism major, right? I mean, I barely scratched my way through art school. This is sort of that outlet. Finally, we get to do this. We get together once a week and talk cars. This has opened up so many doors for us. We've met people I never dreamt that I would have met.
Met great people, seen great things. Had an opportunity to participate in great events just as a result of this. So it's been wonderful from that perspective.
It's a little escape from like reality, right? Like just from the 9 to 5, from the daily grind, right? Where we can just sit around.
Absolutely. To my earlier point, I mean, we've had reoccurring guests, we have friends of the show. And yeah, they look forward to it. They look forward to getting an invite back. They love to come back and hang out. Our audience, they get excited about a new episode. They get disappointed when one isn't released, for example. So, we're just happy to provide that for them.
And that's one of the probably more rewarding things about podcasting. It's not the reviews, not even the letters sometimes. It's that dependency you've created where somebody's like, I want the next episode of the steering committee. I can't get enough of what you guys are doing. And that's what motivates you, right? And so I like your goals. Brad and I, we talk about our show all the time. He's quoted as saying, what, Brad?
Who wants to listen to what we have to say?
Exactly, right? So we were sort of like never thinking about Matt Farah or the Smoking Tire or Camisa or any of those guys. But to your point, every once in a while you get something that slides across your desk and somebody told us, you're like, you guys are like a cross between Motor Week and NPR. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take that to the bank.
That's a good place to be.
That's good. Yeah.
What we actually thought was Car Talk had just come off the air. The older brother had just passed away. And we were like, there's a hole here in the space. Like, who's going to take over for them? Did they have anybody that was going to step up to the plate? Nobody can really replace Car Talk, but you're sort of like a void was created in the autosphere. And COVID also helped that it's like, let's sort of jump in there and try to fill that space if we can. I love what you guys are doing. I think it's fun. And I think you're adhering to the golden rule of any chat show, which is keeping it conversational. You're making people feel like they're there with you, sipping the bourbon and smoking the cigars and having a good time. So I commend you for it.
Well, thanks. Everyone has a story, right? And they don't have to be a big name, a famous person to have a story. Sure. Bruce Meyer's got a great story, but so does Ted Axe at our local shop, Axe and Allies. He's one of our favorite guests because he's a wonderful storyteller. He knows everything about everything. He can tell you the difference between, the 12 different kinds of wrenches he needs to use, and the cars that come in his shop. I mean, that's gold, right? That's as good as anything, right? And he's a guy just up the street.
Through this podcast, through this medium, we've had a chance to really discover these people to us. I mean, just, meet them and then introduce them to our audience. And that's always what's fun. I think we're also just lucky that we also have all these other great shows to listen to, yours show included.
Yeah.
But we have like just this wealth of just great stuff that I would have killed to have when I was younger. You had to kind of wait that 30 days till a new magazine came out or something like that, or Motor Week if you had that, if you were lucky. Even though I grew up in Massachusetts, I actually never listened to Click and Clack Car Talk at all.
Yeah, they were based out of WBUR.
I'm familiar with it. I've listened to enough to know who the two guys are and recognize them when they were in the Cars movies, but I've never really listened to that show. Maybe that was a missed opportunity on my part.
To that point where we have like a spoil of like automotive riches these days, it just shocks me every time that anyone listens to us. I'm always tickled when we talked on this last show about apparently we have a following in Andorra of all places. Doug didn't even know that was a country. I hardly knew it was a country, right? But like here we are, there are people in Andorra listening to our show. Like it's amazing.
We were number one in Senegal this week. That's
Senegal.
All I'm gonna say,
no kidding. Number one. Wow. Wow.
That's awesome. Should go right up on the wall as a trophy.
Yeah. It makes you feel good, That's
There's a deep and rich Volkswagen car culture in Senegal, apparently.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah.
So why don't you guys talk about some of the lessons you've learned while doing the steering committee?
If you want something, ask. And that's just a good life lesson too. You got to get past that fear of being said no to. And honest to God, it doesn't even happen that often. I think the one interview or the one guest that we wanted that hasn't worked out is Paul Zuckerman. And it's not that he turned us down. It's that one question turned into 20 questions, right? I mean, he's the defense attorney, right?
Gave you a direct examination, as we say.
You're like, wait, who's interviewing who here, right?
Yeah, it was very quickly that. And we'll get him yet. We'll have you on yet, Zuckerman. But, I mean, people are generally really receptive. You've got to build up a little bit of a foundation, right? I mean, you can't go out show one and expect, Mr. X to be on. But, after you've got a few shows in the can, people want to talk, right? People want to. I think that's my biggest takeaway. If you want something, ask. And people in the car world are generally very nice, very accommodating. God, when we got plugged in with our pal Tom Horan and the Colorado Grand, I mean, that was a real game changer for us because we just met so many people from that. Never in a million years did we think we'd be involved with a group like that. If you want something, ask. If someone says no, you get over it.
Was there a guest who surprised you? Like something happened, you were like, "Wow, I didn't know that," or "You got to be kidding me," like one of those moments where you're just taken aback.
I'm going to mention Bruce Meyer again, only because he told us his origin story, which was that he had this candle shop in Beverly Hills, which turned into a candle warehouse. We're reading between the lines. I think it was probably a head shop, right? Like it was the 60s. He was a surfer. He was like this cool guy or whatever. So he was someone who surprised me. And he surprised me as well in that he was just so kind, so accommodating. 1 hour turned into 4 or 5 hours. I think we put him up on this pedestal and it's sort of this, this celeb. And when we got there, he just couldn't have been nicer. So he surprised us in the best way. But Doug, maybe you have another.
Great example. But my other example I was thinking of was we have a friend who asked us to basically interview his father. So this is the Willis Wood Sr. episode. In his youth, he'd spent a summer as a photographer on the Formula One circuit, sort of in the height of the 70s there and that sort of time period. And, because his father's getting up there in age and he really wanted to have this nice sort of thing that he could get some of the memories out there into an audio format where maybe they could be shared with other people before maybe he couldn't do that himself. We were happy to oblige. We were very excited about it. But man, I mean, not just the Formula One stories, but he just sat back and just gave us all of these incredible stories, just these interesting experiences, from, how many cattle it takes to buy a Porsche to, like being in a sleazy motel here in Denver and having to shoot roaches off the wall with his 6-shooter, that kind of thing. Like just in no idea where the stories were going, but they were all amazing. And we had the best time with that, I think, with that show.
And the best part about that, the surprise really was, so Willis is actually a sponsor. He owns a company here in Denver called Rhino Signworks. They do signage for like the coolest places, including here, did ours.
Right above you there.
He didn't know that his dad had this chapter in his life. He was going through some old stuff and found these old photos, and he never knew that his dad had been an F1 photographer for a year or two back in the 70s, had all these wild stories. You never know who you're talking to.
Exactly.
True.
That was a great episode and a great surprise. So
Eric's got a story similar to that where it's the Apple car, because everybody was telling you got to talk to this guy. Who was it?
It was Bob Garrettson.
Bob Garrison, yeah.
And now we're opening the kimono here a little bit. Nobody gave us any information ahead of time. All we knew was that he was a racer, like back in the 70s. And a friend of ours who's in the GTM clubhouse, Sky Allen, is like, you got to interview Bob. You got to interview Bob. He's like, 90 some years old. You got to interview him. Blah, blah. And we're like, okay, who's Bob? What about Bob? I felt like Richard Dreyfuss the whole time. Like, I don't get it. So I'm like calling up people I know in museums and stuff. Like, who is this guy? Like, I'm reaching into the archives, trying to find his racing records, and there's not a whole lot of information. One of our co-hosts who drops in for these types of episodes, Mike Carr, he's like a guru. Like, he grew up with Al Holbert and he followed them around and all this kind of stuff. And so he knew Randy Lanier and he's been fabulous. Even Mike was like, I don't know who this guy is. So as he's talking, he's on the phone. He can't see us. If you watch the behind the scenes, it's hilarious because we're like, I don't know where to take this. And he just keeps talking and telling stories, and we're sort of pulling, and we're hearing names like Ray Hall and Redmond and blah, blah, blah. And then he starts talking about Wozniak, and I'm like, what? It continues to digress. And I asked this question all of a sudden about, tell me about Garrettson Enterprises, because I found that little piece of information. He goes, oh, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And I used to service so-and-so's cars, and the marketing guy from Apple came over, and then, Steve Jobs brought over his piece of junk. And one day I was sitting down and I said, I got to get your name on the side of one of my cars. And Mike's head exploded. And we're texting each other like, do you know who this is? I know who this is now. Like, we figured it out. So it was like unbelievable, because he's like the best kept secret in racing. racing, and he won the championship that year. And he's the guy that owned the Apple 935. And so he tells the story.
That's incredible.
And it's hilarious. Like, I go to Car Week or I go to Petit Le Mans and I see all these cars with the Apple computer livery on it from the 935.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do you know the story behind this? And they're like, nah, man, I just think it's cool. And I'm like,
yeah,
the story is amazing. And here's where you can download it, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That is so cool. Yeah, you never know who you're talking with, and who might show up or who you might be referred to. We got to be friends with a guy by the name of William Taylor. And William Taylor was just a guy who lived in Denver. He ran something called the Auto Archives, which was this automotive library. Well, come to find out, William has this long and storied history and is currently, he runs a classic Team Lotus. He's back in the UK. He's the guy that was just here in Littleton, Colorado.
Yeah.
He walked in the first time, Doug, and he's got all these signed, helmets from all the greats. He had personal stories about everyone.
He knew everyone in Formula One. I mean, we saw the collection, but we just figured he was kind of a fan and he had this library. But no, he had worked on several books. He had interviewed pretty much every world championship Formula One driver that raced for McLaren and for some other teams. He put together these beautiful books. I mean, the list of people that he was on a first name basis with was stunning.
Phil Hill to
James Garner, all the way up to Emerson Fittipaldi to Bruce McLaren, and later on, like the head of the McLaren Racing now, or head of McLaren now. So, I mean, he knew all these people. He had them all in his contacts,
Yeah, he was in our backyard.
We call that the Golden Rolodex.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
No, I mean, he's like, oh, yeah, and he had a great story on any of them. I mean, if we ping-ponged into any of these guys in our conversation, he would have something. Again, Ryan, this is making me think, too, when we had that Porsche draft episode way back when.
Yeah, way back when.
Just sort of a brain fart of an idea I came up with. And we, at the last second, had a guest drop out, just kind of unexpectedly ghosted us. We pulled in, who now I consider a good friend, Justin Underwood at Porsche of Colorado Springs. I mean, we were talking about Porsches drafting on these fantasy cars. We've never driven them. But he had a story for every single one. He could come in there and just give us color commentary, just like he was, like an ex-quarterback in a football game. Like, let me tell you about the clutch on that. Let me tell you about how the startup procedure goes on that.
Cars that were, fantasy cars for us, and he's become a good friend. He runs, the Classic Center down at Porsche Colorado Springs. Shout out to him and John Deisty, who do the First Dibs podcast down there. Again, happy accidents. And, you talked about things you've learned. And another thing, not only do you need to ask, but you need to put yourself in these situations, right? I mean, it's all wonderful to throw darts, but I mean, if you aim the darts, right, like it, things generally come out in your favor.
So you guys have already mentioned a couple episodes that stick out in your minds, but I'm a new listener coming to the steering committee for the first time. Where do you point me to? What are some top hits, or do you have a best of playlist of episodes that are your favorites or that are fan friendly? A good way to gateway into becoming a steering committee fan?
And we all apologize for our first season, right? I mean, that's just
God, yeah, don't start there.
I'm starting episode 1.
Oh my God, yeah. That cringe, as my 11-year-old daughter would say. Yeah. And I feel like Apple did something recently where they changed the order if you don't default it to, and it's just, I can't think of, who might be listening to that early stuff. But Doug, I think you probably would agree. Bruce Meyer is a great place to start. Terry Kargas, the executive director at the Peterson Museum, is one that I'm very proud of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mike Coons, who's not done a lot of podcasts and media. He's the gentleman who runs the Mercedes-Benz Classic Center in Long Beach, California. That's another one. I think the ones we did at the Colorado Grand, where it was bourbon and cigar night. So we had all these participants, and I mean, you get everyone in the Colorado Grand.
That was a rare reappearance of the original band again. We brought that out for that show, the Bourbons and Backfire.
Yeah. I mean, to talk to people, whose names having a great time at the Grand.
So, for example, this year, I mean, even to make it easier, we put together around the holidays when things get a little tight with recording schedule, we did put together bundles of what we think are some of our best episodes, kind of as one big long episode to listen to. We were thinking along road trip lines because that's what a lot of people will be doing around Thanksgiving and Christmas. Those are good ones to check out. And I think those include many of the episodes we're talking about. We didn't put Ted Axe in there, right? Because we hadn't recorded that one yet. But that's another one.
That's a fun one.
Anything with Ted Axe, he is just a fun hang to listen to. That's some of our best representation of just sort of the way we can be kind of a casual, funny sort of hang.
Well, I'm going to start listening to all those then.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
After I get through your first season.
Yeah.
You can listen to the first season if you want. So we did pick out one. We did it about a year ago where we went back and re-listened to our first episode and then basically gave like audio commentary over
Yeah,
it.
Mystery Science Theater 2000s.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Eric, we got to do that.
Yeah, we should. That's how we'll celebrate 300, I guess.
Yeah.
You guys have 300 episodes?
Oh, yeah.
That's impressive, guys.
Yeah, where are you guys at?
177, I think, is where we are now.
Yeah.
Early on, it was kind of like whenever we felt like it, and then it became weekly. And
Going back to when you asked about like what have we learned? I mean, I think you guys know this with podcasts. It has to be part of a habit. It's best to do it on a regular schedule and have it upload on the same day. You don't want it, popping up all over the place.
you're not always in the mood.
Yeah, no, it's true.
What do you guys do when you're not in the mood, right? Like, I mean, it's just, you just,
The secret is called a backlog.
yeah, see, and you guys are good,
Yeah,
good for that. Yeah.
Well, we're from Colorado. We're much like South Park. We're putting this together every week, like on the fly. I don't know if people understand that reference, but yeah, those guys like put that show together every single week live, basically.
Eric, who's a huge fan of history, I mean, he really gets into all this. I mean, this is right in his wheelhouse, and just hearing all these stories and going back in time and just listening to everybody. It's not work for him, to be able to do this. So
It's a labor of love.
that's why it's so easy for him. Yeah.
I can't say I'm super pumped every single week, but I would say almost every week, though. I don't have many days where I don't want to sit down and talk cars. So that does make it easier. Because I know that was another question people asked me right off the bat when I started telling them about this podcast. It's like, well, what do you talk about? How do you come up with stuff to talk about? And I'm like, I don't know how to answer that question. I always have something to talk about. I don't know. I'm just always willing to go into something, always willing to learn something, listen to someone, or just put my own 2 cents out there.
Well, we know that the job of a podcaster is never over. And Eric likes to talk about the Mount Rushmore of guests.
It's Mount Everest. Mount Everest.
Yes, the Mount Everest of guests that we're trying to reach the top of that summit. But for you guys, what are some bucket list guests, or what's your Mount Everest of guests that you're trying to get to?
That's a great question, because I feel like so many of our best shows have been with like regular people, and so many of the big names, you've heard them before. What about you, Doug? Is there someone who...
Yeah, there's one off the top of the head that I could think of that I think would
Yeah.
be great for us, because I think it would be a good conversation, and I also think it would be great promotion for us. Dax Shepard is a huge
Yeah, I can see
podcaster,
that.
and he is a huge bona fide car guy. He's got the chops for that, and I think it would be funny. I think it'd be a fun guest to have on the shows. I actually saw one of his shows live here in Denver when they came out here. Armchair Expert, I think, is the name of his show. It's a big one. So yeah, that would be one. I'd love to chat with him. I always thought he was funny. I think he's a cool guy. I think he'd be fun to hang out with. So that's up there for me.
I think for me, and I mentioned Chubba Chetta before, longtime, editor-in-chief of Car and Driver. He's someone who I met locally. He's kind of my white whale because he's a PCA guy. He's very involved. I reached out to him. I didn't hear back. I'm not quite sure if maybe he didn't get the message. I would love to have him on because I think he was at the helm, I think, in my eyes, the best period in time for Car and Driver. And he also very famously was one who introduced a redesign, being a graphic designer. And this was a redesign that really fell flat. And he stuck with it. And I have a million questions for him. He's, I think, a principled guy. I think he had some of the best writers were under him when he was editor. And he's local. So he's right there, but haven't quite made that happen yet. So Chubba Chetta, if you're listening, I'd love to have you on the steering committee sometime.
You got to speak it to manifest it, You got to put it out there.
That's right.
He's listening in Senegal.
Yeah. Maybe he knows someone in Senegal. Yeah. It'll get the word out to him.
Not Chubba necessarily, but so many of these guys, they're getting up in years. We need to have them on. We need to get their stories down. That can be around forever, right? None of us will, right?
True. Well, we got really close to one of Brad's.
I'm curious. Yeah.
Who's this for you guys?
So on Brad's side of Mount Everest, right? So there's 2 sides to the peak, obviously. We got really, really close to Heartthrob, played McDreamy on television. We're talking Patrick Dempsey.
He'd be a great guest, I think.
Patrick's a pal of one of our friends, JJ Collier. That's another great episode you should check out. He's actually been on a couple of times. If this really is your white whale, let us know. Maybe we can try to connect you.
Yes, I think
So,
it
yeah,
is,
for sure.
definitely.
He wants to talk to McDreamy.
That might be the one episode my wife listens to.
All right, that makes me feel better because I don't think my wife has listened to one of our episodes. It's just not in her wheelhouse. Doug, what about Kathleen?
Avid listener, honestly.
Okay.
She's a big consumer of podcasts in general. She's not into cars, but
My daughter listens more than my
That's
wife
cool.
does.
Yeah.
well, that's cool. That's actually even cooler, honestly. So it's harder to get your kids to think what you're doing.
Yeah.
So How old is she?
10.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
I joke all the time. She's got a crush on Andy Lee from Flying Lizard. Like, she's into the racing. I took her to Watkins Glen.
Oh, yeah.
And she was all of a sudden, she's like, Dad, we got to go to Road America. I took her to
Oh,
Petit Le
that's so
Mans
cool.
last year. She wanted to go to Le Mans with me last year for the 100th, but I was like, honey, it's like a week long. You're not going to be able to do it, whatever. So we took her to Petit, jokingly saying, well, you're small and it's the small Le Mans, right?
Yeah.
But she loved it. It was a lot of fun. And even this year, she's like, Dad, what race are we going to?
Oh,
She's
cool.
hoping that Flying Lizard's going to be there with the Lamborghini and all that kind of stuff. So, and even at Petite, she was all excited thinking the Iron Dames car was Andy's Lamborghini. And it was like, no, honey, that's the all-girl team. And then she's like, oh my God.
Oh, right on. Right on.
Yeah.
She'll sneak down and like Rolex, she'll come and watch the race with me and stuff like
that's
that. So it's
cool.
pretty cool.
That's amazing. Well done. Good parenting.
So I have an 11-year-old and she's not into racing yet, but I took her to Denver Racing Sim here.
Oh, nice.
They've got this $120,000 simulator, full motion and all this, and I couldn't peel her off the thing. There's hope yet.
Excellent. Well done.
So the other two, we joke, there's a couple of them that are fortunately they've left us, so we'll never be able to interview them, but maybe unless it's archive footage.
Mhm.
But the other two, at least for me, and it's a little bit of probably more difficult than getting Dempsey, is going to be Giugiaro, the designer.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Michelle Mouton, the queen of WRC.
Right on.
But for us, we've always approached it just like Mount Everest. You can never go straight to the top.
Yep.
Even if you have technology to help you get there, money, resources, you got to go from base camp and work your way up. So it's a little bit of a Kevin Bacon game to make that happen.
Step over a few dead bodies along the way, right?
100%. Those are the other podcasts that aren't on the air.
That's
anymore,
right. That's right. Which is most of them, right? So just the fact that you've done 300 episodes, that we've done 177, I mean, that's something right there, right?
Yeah, it's a good analogy too, because I think even people who are very good at mountain climbing and who are well funded and well resourced, I mean, they sometimes don't make it up at first, but you try again, you keep going, and it'll be that much sweeter when you get up there.
Exactly.
So yeah, I like that analogy. I just finished reading Into Thin Air, so I'm all up on Mount Everest trivia right now.
And I'm glad we're talking about the mountains, because it's now time that we drop it into fourth gear and talk about the Rocky Mountain car culture. And I'm really fascinated by this because I used to work for a company that was based out of Boulder, so I would fly in and out all the time.
Okay.
And so like you were saying about the guy in Peoria, Illinois, kind of going, I didn't know there was car culture in Denver. We're used to the left coast, which is big into car shows and the museums and the scene, we'll call it. And here I'd like to say on the East Coast, it's very much grounded in motorsport. We've got more tracks than you can shake a stick at.
Yep. Legacy tracks.
Exactly. Built on natural terrain and things like that. Just these classic venues, Road Atlanta, Watkins Glen, BIR, Lime Rock, and so on down the line. But when you think about car culture, you don't just go to Denver. I mean, for me as a racer, you got High Plains and Pikes Peak.
You should go to Colorado Springs.
Right.
Yeah, you got to go to Colorado Springs. So
it's funny because one of the reasons I moved to Colorado was for the roads. And I think that's the differentiator here. Back in Chicago, there was a lot of money. People had wonderful cars, but we didn't have wonderful roads. You would have to take those cars 2 or 3 hours away to Southwest Wisconsin. They call it the driftless zone, where the glaciers didn't scrape and you actually had hills and great roads. I think that's the difference here. People in Colorado, and Doug, maybe you confirm or deny this, but I think people here are drivers. I think that's the difference. It's all about the drive. We have these wonderful roads. We don't have a full season like, people in Southern California do, but our roads are as good as anything in the world. I truly believe that. We have roads 30 minutes outside of town here that are amazing. So people here drive. They drive their cars. We have a pal, Dan McGinnis, very famously has 70-some thousand miles on his 2022 Porsche Spyder.
Yeah,
I think that's what makes it unique. And you worked out of here. There is quite a bit of money here. There is a car scene through Pikes Peak. I think that's brought a lot of people here. We have a wonderful Porsche dealership in Porsche, Colorado Springs. So we get all the good cars here, right? We're big enough where we have a Ferrari dealership. You can buy the cars. I think for a city its size, there's a real outsized car community. And to me, I think it comes down to the roads. We just have wonderful roads and people drive them.
What's the ratio of Subarus to Porsches these days?
Ah.
Is it 10-1 still?
I was going to say Jeeps.
my kids, we all have a game about, you pick one of these car brands and whoever hits the most by the time we get to the ski mountain wins. And yeah, I would say Subaru and Toyota. You just do Toyota 4Runner. You don't even have to do the whole brand, just 4Runner. That's going to be your big winner there.
Yeah, State Car, Colorado, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that like the punch buggy game? Does somebody get hurt hurt at the end of this, or?
Yeah, they haven't turned it into that yet. They will at some point. But no, right now it's just counting it off. But yeah, I mean, I'm not convinced that there's not a non-TRD Pro version of the 4Runner. That's all we see out here is, yeah, but a lot of Subarus. I've had a few Subarus in my lifetime. And in fact, I think I've done a disservice to my girls because I had a WRX 2014 and then I had a 2004 Legacy GT manual station wagon. My girls, they assume that Subaru is on the same footing as a Porsche or a Lotus or a Ferrari. I hate to break it to them that they're such a pedestrian company in so many ways. That's what they think is the fastest car you should get.
So Ryan, you talked about the long driving season in the Rocky Mountain area and all that. So I got to ask, and this comes straight out of your show, how many miles you put on the Porsche this year?
Well, yeah, the GT4 gets about 3,000 miles a year. But I will say this, I'm a busy guy. And when I get in that car, I want to make those miles count. It's not a car that I'm going to take to the grocery store, right? It's a car that I'm going to, put 200 or 300 miles on in a drive. Plus, I'm not a wealthy guy. I've got to pay attention to these things, right? I do have to pay attention to resale, right? Got to make every mile count, right? So we're at about 8,900 miles. It is a 20, about 3,000 miles a year. I wish it were more. Like I said, every one of those miles has been memorable. It's been rallies. It's been wonderful drives with friends on weekends.
Yeah.
But that was part of the equation when I bought the damn thing, right? Like, I mean, it was a stretch, admittedly, for me to buy a car like that. And so I kind of had to go in with a plan. And as long as I'm not underwater, right?
Come out on top, especially in today's used car market, though, right?
Yeah.
So on the motorsport side of things, like I said, sort of jokingly, in your area, you have High Plains racetrack and then Pikes Peak. So have either of you done any track time? Have you gone to any of the races or been to Pikes Peak?
Yeah, we were there together.
Ryan probably has a unique experience with that, actually being there. But
yeah, that was the day I came down with COVID. So I spent most of the day in Doug's truck. I went last year and for practice, it was the one day in the history of Pikes Peak that the thing was rained out. So I'm hoping third time's the charm and we'll make it back again this year. I've driven a couple of local tracks. I'm not a track rat. I don't know. The roads are so good here. I don't have a need for the tracks like I did when I lived in Chicago and we do Gingerman or Autobahn. Not that I wouldn't love to. Doug's more the motorsport guy between the two of us. I'm more the canyon rat, I guess.
Yeah, and I haven't done. I actually don't think I've literally ever done a track day. I've been to more races over my years. In my youth, I was really into IndyCar, Formula One. I've gotten away with it. I've kind of dipped back in and out at times. Back in Massachusetts, we used to have an IndyCar race up in Loudon, New Hampshire, just right up the next state up, which is not very far. So I used to go to the IndyCar race there. And then I went to the Formula One race up in Montreal a number of times when I was in high school and college with my dad and all his friends. And we had a little tradition, a little group, a little reunion every year up there at the circuit there. And I've never done any track days. I've never done a lot of even karting or anything like that. So I haven't even made it over to Denver Racing Simulator yet. So we got to get that changed.
We got to give Doug a break because he's got 3 young girls.
Yeah, it's tough. Eats up a lot of the free time as well as also the disposable income.
For sure. So you guys are a bit of a traveling roadshow when it comes to the steering committee. You're on site in a lot of places. You're meeting up. You're going to big events and things like that. And so you get to see a lot of the country. You're bouncing around from the left coast to the right coast. Compare and contrast car culture, not just left to right, but compared to Denver. What do you like? What don't you like? What have you seen that's different? You're like, man, I wish we had that here.
I mean, I think it all comes back to the mothership, which is California, right? And LA, and it's in the air. I mean, there are car-themed breweries and, there's the Good Vibes Breakfast Club and there's the Peterson. There are any number of wonderful car museums. I don't think anything can touch California. We have a lot of followers down in Florida. There's a great scene down there, right? I mean, they have great weather, if not great roads. Denver, like I said, is unique, I think, because we're drivers here, right? It's not about the cars and coffee so much. It's not about showing off. It's just about going out with friends and just driving hard on some wonderful roads. Shout out to our friend Danny P, up in Seattle. I know they've got a great car scene. I have yet to get up there, but I know that they have something wonderful up there. Avance is, of course, up there and everything else. I don't know what the car scene is out east too much. And you've got those great legacy tracks. I grew up going to Road America in Elkhart Lake. I'll put that up there with any track. It's a wonderful place. But I think for me, I mean, nothing really beats California. There are always multiple things going on. It's just a wonderful place to be if you're a car person.
I echo that. I mean, with California specifically and Los Angeles really specifically, I mean, you see some exotic hardware, but like honestly, I get in some ways just more tickled when you see not an exotic car, but just an old one that's been well preserved, something kind of ordinary that's just still being driven around. It's in perfect shape, whether it's an old muscle car, or an old van or something like that, like an old, Volkswagen van or something like that. And it's all just perfect because these cars all seem to be just well preserved out there. Sort of a little compare and contrast. Growing up in New England, you'd see a fair amount of interesting stuff there. It's a short driving season there, shorter than it is here in Colorado. It all goes away for a while. A lot of stuff has gotten rusted out and sort of like lost to the salt of time, if you will. But one thing about New England is I think when it's the fall and it's still warm out and you have these really tight, small, winding roads. I mean, it's kind of like the perfect sort of setting for one of these little like underpowered English roadsters that I love. You kind of see something like that and you can picture driving around in a little MGA or a Triumph or something like that, and you just would have so much fun with it. That's kind of what I like. I like kind of like the old, I guess, sort of a classic sense that you get out there.
So what's next for you guys in the show? What's next? Any spoilers or big events?
Yeah,
you got coming up?
It's a great question. And we're headed out to LA here in a few weeks. We've got some really cool people lined up to talk with. Don't want to give any spoilers now, but definitely check in.
LA is something, obviously, we've kind of made that an annual trip. That's kind of a good recharge for us. It's kind of like our spring break, if you will, to kind of get out there. California can really recharge us. And we've met so many great people and we always have a great time.
Very much looking forward to this year's Colorado Grand. We got involved over the last couple of years. Doug and I volunteered last year. We're officially or unofficially the official podcast of the Colorado Grand now, so we'll be embedded. We don't have to drive the luggage truck this year. We just found this out. We're very excited. That was our big volunteer commitment last year, was we drove this luggage truck. The best smelling luggage, though, you can imagine the people that are there.
Yeah.
And then I wrote the car descriptions for the route book for the Grand last year, and I'm looking forward to doing that again this year. But hopefully we just do more podcasting, drive more of the cars or ride in more of the cars. That's really become, at least for me, the highlight of my year. So it's something that we'll build up to throughout the year.
Well, guys, we've reached that part of the episode where we like to invite our guests to tell us about any shoutouts, promotions, or anything else that we haven't covered thus far.
Doug, I can give shout outs to our sponsors and you can back me up here. We just had Ryan Evans from Brews Beers. Brews Beers is a wonderful Belgian style brewery here in Denver. He was our very first sponsor. He's still with us today. Rhino Signworks, we mentioned before, Willis Wood, Daryl Vaughn.
There.
Realtor, local guy, big enthusiast who's wonderful. And
rounded out Jack Sloan Watches, Jack Sloan, SLOANE.com, and makers of fine watches that are proudly produced in the United States of America. Check them out as well.
And a shout out to our friend Tom Horan, who I mentioned earlier, who's the chair of the Colorado Grand, who's done so much for us, has become a dear friend. And also our friend Dan Pilling, Danny P on Cars. He's the one that brought us together. He's sort of the great connector, the glue for so many of us who do what we do. A gentleman through and through. So shout out to Danny.
And if you're curious about more Colorado car culture, check out our friends at First Dibs, the podcast right out of Porsche, Colorado Springs. You'll be blown away with what kind of stuff they get through that shop on a regular basis.
Join hosts Ryan and Doug in the garage as they convene the steering committee, a laid-back take on all things cars and driving, straight out of Colorado. Tune into the show everywhere you download, stream, or listen to your favorite podcasts, or follow them on social media at the Steering Committee Podcast on Instagram.
Ryan and Doug, I can't thank you guys enough for coming on Break Fix and sharing your story, helping us in this East meets West episode here. And you know what's great about this is we are all sort of brothers in arms in the automotive and vehicle and motorsports community together. I like cars, you like cars, we all love cars. We get along. If it's got four wheels and a motor, let's do this, right? So I appreciate what you guys are doing to continue to spread enthusiasm for car culture, because that's important, as things are changing with the evolution. I'm sure we could have a whole nother episode on that as well. I have to applaud you for what you're doing and keep fighting the good fight. Keep putting those episodes out there. We look forward to listening to whoever's going to be on the steering committee next.
Well, thank you guys. And we can't wait to have you guys on the steering committee. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you guys. And I think I speak for Ryan on this too. You guys do incredible stuff and we're excited to dig into your catalog as well. So thank you for getting another great podcast for me to listen to.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed another awesome episode of Break Fix Podcast, brought to you by Grand Touring Motorsports. If you'd like to be a guest on the show or get involved, be sure to follow us on all social media platforms at Grand Touring Motorsports. And if you'd like to learn more about the content of this episode, be sure to check out the follow-on article at gtmotorsports.org. We remain a commercial-free and no annual fees organization through our sponsors, but also through the generous support of our fans, families, and friends through Patreon. For as little as $2.50 a month, you can get access to more behind-the-scenes action, additional pit stop minisodes, and other VIP goodies, as well as keeping our team of creators fed on their strict diet of Fig Newtons, gummy bears, and Monster. So consider signing up for Patreon today at www.patreon.com/GT Motorsports. And remember, without you, none of this would be possible.